Good morning. Good morning. Wow, I think that's the reason. Can I have my slides, please, here? There are three reasons I don't belong to this room. The first one is that I'm wearing a suit and tie, which clearly separates me from this group. The second one, I actually am carrying physical business cards, which of course makes me redundant in this room. And the third one is that before the session started, all of that which happened, my eyes couldn't take it. So I certainly don't belong to this crowd. So for that reason, if any of you find my session today irrelevant, you are not wrong. It actually is going to be. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Akhilesh, as you heard, but all the introduction which you heard was overstated, like what ChatGPT does sometimes when you ask it a question, which sometimes need not be done that way. I want to start with saying a hello to all of you. I hope most of you in this room are humans. I do hope that it continues for some more time before I will start to say, those of you who are humans may actually have a difference in what we talk about today in a few years to come. I want to start with a few disclaimers. The first one is, and they are very important disclaimers, I don't pretend to know more than you guys do here. I just happen to be lucky. And actually, Samir called out saying that somebody else is paying the bill. Maybe that's the reason I'm standing here on the stage. Some of the data which you will see on my screens is not necessarily verified because there's not enough data. Because if I were to ask you saying how many parameters GPT-4 is trained on, I'm sure you will guess it. My guess will be as good as yours. So that's the reason. Some of them are estimates, so don't hold me to that. As KPMG, I have to give those disclaimers for sure. If you find my session just about entertaining, I think you're missing the point. And the last one is that I'll speak very fast going forward because I can get away with some bluff. The theme for my session today is going to be aha. So I hope I create an aha moment at the end. I know you guys, the person who started this event, the MC we had, the wonderful lady, she's actually done one thing very wrong. Because I've gone to many conferences and they say that the number of claps in a conference are constant. It's just that they are unevenly distributed. So I'm actually unhappy that some of them have already been consumed for something which doesn't belong to me. But I hope if I create an aha moment, give me some claps at that point in time. Let me start with a fairy tale, like all of us have been living, the fairy tale of humans, a long, 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 long time ago. And that's why I've taken you about 5,000 years ago. So 5,000 years ago, what did we do? We certainly didn't come to GCCX conference organized by 3AI. We certainly didn't talk about some of those fancy names which create fake productivity outcomes. By the way, just for you to know that the return on technology investment since 1970 has been negative. So every dollar spent in IT has actually delivered a negative ROI. That's a fact which has been proven many, many times over. None of the fault of technology, by the way, just for you to know. Okay? But we didn't do all that. What did we do? We actually did farming. We cultivated our farms. We did some animal rearing. We went around and just did our business. And then some set of people who kind of arose and they called themselves as priests. And they said that, we are different from you because we can translate what gods want to tell you. And the only reason we can do it is because we can read and write and you can't. But don't worry, you don't have to do it. That's our job. God has given us the supreme right that we can read and write, and therefore we will tell you what to do. 99% of the time you go and farm your field, but 1% come and listen to this thing, sometimes in a church, sometimes in a temple, and sometimes in any other institution. But the knowledge of reading and writing was retained to 0.1% of humans at that point in time. But we humans decided saying that's a bad idea. God did not create some special people. We should also learn to read and write. And because most of us learn to read and write, we are here sitting in this room talking to a boring KPMG guy. And that's exactly the moment some of us are feeling, saying, hey, it's somebody else's job to create GPT models. That's not for me. Artificial intelligence is being created by some people who are sitting somewhere which are kind of maybe the messenger of open AI God. But the reality I want to tell you is that if we stay in that paradigm, we will be animal rearing. So one of the things which I really want to practice and talk all about is that the AI of today is about reading and writing of 5,000 years ago. So it's our responsibility, of course, all of us know, but our responsibility to actually go out and teach everybody on how to not use AI, how to build AI. because building AI will be as easy as reading and writing in few years' time. So let's not be worrying about and leaving it to some special people. Some numbers, don't trust these numbers, but I'll still give it to you. There are estimates by some major financial institution that the AI's contribution to global economy is going to be few trillion, 13 trillion. There's a lot of money being created in India also, close to about $1 trillion of value being created. So these numbers are big. Just to tell you that AI is going to do something really big. The real number which I want to talk to you about here is a lot of us take some of these things for free. So when you click on a prompt on a ChatGPT and it gives results, sounds like free. But one thing which most people do not realize, I'm sure all of you in this room realize, is that the cost of training a GPT model could be as high as $15 million. And that is exactly the reason when you go to ChatGPT, it says, my data is as old as September or November 2021, because if it was so easy to train ChatGPT, they would have trained it every morning. So one of the things which I think most people who use GPT do not realize, it's a super expensive technology as of now. And therefore, when you go and talk about use cases, I think we should be conscious about it. It takes about $100,000 just to run the ChatGPT model every day, not including the capital cost. So it's just the cost of fuel in the car and not looking at the cost of building or buying a car. And that's a fairly expensive. So one thing which people don't realize is very, very expensive technology. And our endeavor should be, how do we make it cheaper? Let me first start and tell you what is AI busy doing these days. Nothing to do with GCC, but I just want to tell you two very interesting use cases which I'm sure some of you can apply. The first one is AI is being used in smart mattresses. And these mattresses are available. The simple job they do is that when your partner snores, it actually got a robotic arm to turn the face away. In production commercials, I'm not making it up right now, so it's a great job AI is serving to the humanity. It's saving some marriages. There's another one which is a monkey pager, unfortunately, rest in peace, died, which was a brain chip implanted by Neuralink. So Neuralink is a company which I'm sure you're familiar, is trying to experiment saying, can we implement a brain chip inside humans, not yet allowed, but started with monkeys, which can actually allow us to become augmentedly more intelligent and not just being artificially intelligent. So there are a lot of great things AI is doing, and let's be sure that it's not just the boring GCC job the AI is doing today. This is one point I want all of us to pause and reflect, is that everybody, including smart people, but more importantly, all the CEOs, including smart people, but most importantly, CEOs, are actually more interested in generative AI. And those of you who come from the field of data analytics and AI know for a fact that there is a predictive AI which is far more powerful for doing business use cases, which our CEOs never bothered. But what they're bothered is saying, how can I use ChatGPT to do something? In fact, one of my clients called saying that, the chairman has called from the UK saying, can you make a presentation in 4 hours saying how you are using generative AI to do effective internal audit? Okay. The person who never even read the internal audit report is now interested. So the point I want to make here is that predictive AI, in my view, has far more business use cases, which we can see it can do business analytics, financial forecast, all of these things. So when you see Netflix telling you which movie you should watch because you watched X, when Amazon tells you which product you should buy because your friend bought, all of that is predictive AI. Nothing generative, only predictive. Labeling, classification, all of that, which has tremendous business value. But we are all getting fancied. So this is what I call saying, this is the wife, and here is a girlfriend which is coming now in our lives, so generative AI. We are all, some of us who are like 50 plus saying, okay, maybe I'm bored with predictive AI. It promised a lot of things, never delivered anything. But let's try, maybe there is something new, fancy, starting with that S word, 4 letters. I'm not going to say all of that on a public stage here. Let's try this because this looks great. And for those of you who have gone through at least one cycle would realize that, this will turn into same stage. So the point I'm trying to make is that generative AI was actually not created, by the way, wasn't designed for the business use cases. It was actually designed, by the way, by mistake, and created largely for creative use cases. So you can generate art, DALL-E 2 we saw, you can generate text, we saw ChatGPT, many, many other models, music creation, video creation, composition, all that. But the great news is that you don't need to look at generative AI is bad. We need to look at generative AI is great combined with predictive AI. So it's not going to do the wonders alone, but don't take the same analogy and go home and saying that I've got a spouse and also a girlfriend and collectively they can do a great job. They will possibly never do that. So it's a good idea to have a half analogy. Don't stretch the analogy for the remaining half. You could clap it now. Thank you so much. Thank you. So what I want to tell you is that, let's not, there is a huge amount of money, media buzz, everything is being spoken about on generative AI, which in my view is a little bit overstated, and there's very less on predictive AI, which is actually understated. So we could do a lot of things together. And to me, generative AI is what I call the watch moment. So the time existed even before we as humans existed. We created a mechanism to measure time, but the time wasn't democratized. So it had somewhere on town hall clocks and maybe on some lighthouse clocks, etc., etc. But the moment the wrist watches got invented, the value of time multiplied in all our lives becoming so much more efficient. Now you could tell people saying, come at this time, and the meetings will be more efficient. And that is the way I think that generative AI is actually going to make the time valuable and not the AI itself valuable. Okay. All right, take a pause. I'm halfway through my presentation, halfway through my time as well, 40 seconds less. This is my central theme. All that I've said, forget it, AI is irrelevant. And I'm sure now Samir is crushing his teeth. He says, what did I allow KPMG to come onto stage and talk about this crappy thing? Because all of you guys believe in AI, and I'm telling you AI is absolutely irrelevant. And my take is AI is irrelevant if it doesn't have the right data foundation. A lot of senior executives do not realize that what goes under the hood for that car to run beautifully, it is all about that data and massaging of the data and quality of data and all that which goes. So all of you who come from GCC, I want to say that data is far more essential than just having that model. Let's talk about why data is a challenge today in our world. So the first one is that many years ago, Adam Smith came and said that the factors of production is labor, capital, any other kinds of resources which you think is typically entrepreneurship is also a great idea to have a business. But in today's time, what he forgot at that time wasn't relevant is that the biggest factor of production today is data. And in most cases, data is not considered as an important factor of production. This is an article which I picked up very recently. I could have said the same thing, you wouldn't have believed. But the reality is that in today's time, AI startups have tons of cash. They have lots of investor funding. But what they don't have is they don't have data. And that is why all of you in GCC, I want to say that build mechanism of ecosystem with startups, because they don't need your money. They will actually do it for free, but they need your data. So I think it's very important for us to find people who have capital and people who have data. You don't need to have capital because you can have a lot of data. And so in one of the conferences, I actually had said something very different, but I'll borrow again somebody else's philosophy. Data is like water, but unfortunately, it is the water being transported through the tankers in Delhi roads. So by the time it starts and by the time it gets there, only 35% reaches its destination because the data in our organization is running through the pipelines which are extremely leaky. And what problem does this create is I'll tell you. 68% of the data, by the way, this is largely verifiable statistics, 68% of the data is not analyzed, which is basically crap. This data, if you actually use, you will make wrong decisions. About 53% of the project are stuck because they put a use case, it worked on one set of data, didn't work on another set of data, so they're all stuck on pre-production cases. And by the way, I didn't put an year, but there's a prediction that by 2026, we will run out of all the data which we've created so far and has already been used up to training the AI models. So which means that now we have models. So far we didn't have models and lots of data, and by 2026 we'll actually be left with no data, means no water, but enough models to run on that. So how would we live in that world where we don't have enough data? And then we'll again turn to GPT models for generative AI to create synthetic data, which will be an amplification of things, which is basically saying getting a new CEO and talking about the old strategy. So in my view, AI is irrelevant if it doesn't have the right data foundation. The second reason is that AI is irrelevant, as I call it, if it's just an empty refrigerator. And this is an analogy which is not mine. I borrowed it. I heard somebody said that, people who made refrigerators made tons of money. But those are not the guys who became super rich. It's the guys who turned a Coke bottle into a product which can actually be stored in the refrigerator became super rich. And many times I'm seeing that there is a rush to build a refrigerator. Yes, somebody must build that refrigerator. But if you only build that refrigerator, if you only build that model, if you only have that classy thing, you're not going to make money. The money will get made 1,000,000 times more, not 100 times more, not 1,000 times more, 1,000,000 times more if you build a bottle which can sit in that refrigerator. So I think it's all about use cases. and there is a huge opportunity landscape, and I want to give you this KPMG frame to say that not all use cases are same. You don't consume the same amount of meat, as the same amount of chips, as the same amount of milk, as the same amount of Coca-Cola. So which use case deserves to sit in your expensive refrigerator will determine how much you invest in. So coming back to again, that in my view, AI is irrelevant if it does not invent a Coke bottle which should sit in that refrigerator. And the third one, I would say AI is irrelevant if it actually does some of these things. So there are many examples. I've picked up some where AI has actually delivered outlandishly wrong results. And I picked up one. There's a company which used AI to predict the prices of the housing market, and they actually ended up buying houses which were far more expensive than actually the price of the houses were. And as a result, the company went bankrupt because they relied too much on that model which was going on historical data. There's also, and I'm saying that, the Dutch government, they said, there are a lot of people who are doing frauds on child support things. So say, there are people who claim for child support, but they actually don't have children. And let's use an AI model. And the AI model said that, who are the people who are actually cheating? And they started to send notices, and guess what? The AI was wrong in predicting that the people are cheating. The people were actually not cheating, and the Dutch government had to withdraw that model. And there are many other models, the retinopathy, which is, how can you diagnose diabetes through the retina. Again, 2D results not very reliable. So the point I'm making that AI is yet again irrelevant if it is not trustworthy. This is one case, I'm sure not ChatGPT, but something similar. There's a guy in Belgium, he was encouraged to actually commit a suicide because the chatbot became emotionally involved with him and said that, best way for you to stop climate change is to take your own life, and unfortunately the guy died. So as much as we talk about the great business use cases, there are also some terrible business use cases, and therefore my third point is AI is irrelevant if it is not trustworthy. So summing up all of this thing, what I'm saying that AI is irrelevant in my view for three reasons. If it doesn't have the right data foundation, it is irrelevant if it doesn't have the soda for the refrigerator, and it's irrelevant if it is not trustworthy. So what? I think the great thing is that in my view, all the GCCs in India and all of you in this room are super lucky. Luckier than me who just be on the stage, because you are going to be on the stage for several years to come. In my view, if there's one cohort, as Samir called out, which is in the sweetest spot today, it is the GCCs in India, because the AI is irrelevant unless it meets those three conditions. And now let's say that do GCCs in India allow us to satisfy those three conditions so that AI cannot be relevant? So the first one is that the data foundation, and I've given three big reasons. India is the only country where you can get population scale data to experiment with any of your models. You go to many other countries, you will not find data even 1/10 or 1/20 of it. So GCCs in India have great advantage of population scale data. The second one is that the data cleansing is a huge task, which can only in my view be done at a center like this. And the third one is that, like it or not, even the biggest companies will spend more time today for the next 3 years, not in building models, not in building use cases, but in actually training the models and getting the models to do the right thing. GCCs are perfectly positioned to take care of that dimension because we have the scale, we have the ecosystem, and all of that. I think the GCC in India allow to do a low-cost experimentation compared to, imagine the same experimentation was to be done in Sweden or US or somewhere else, the cost of that experimentation is. So many times, a lot of companies say, big companies, we don't care about cost. We don't come to India about cost. I think they're lying most of the time. Okay? And this is one factor. Even though you don't care about the cost, I think there is a way for you to do more for the same time. Cross-enterprise use cases. GCCs are the only example where you can work, if you are working for a bank, if you are a GCC of a bank, you can work for the investment bank, retail bank, corporate bank, another bank. How do you create cross-enterprise use case data is only possible in my view in GCC most effectively, and we can fail fast. And the last one is that how do GCC help build trustworthiness? I think till the time we can go, and I can say I'm talking to a room full of robots in next few years' time, I think for all good models, we need human in the loop. We cannot take the results of AI and just apply it blindly. We have seen many failures. So the human in the loop is a great position for GCCs to pitch for. The second one is continuous monitoring. Like it or not, AI will do whatever it does. Thank you so much. I'll have 2 more minutes and I'll finish it. And the third one is that the AI ecosystem, and I want to really thank people like Samir who created this 3 AI kind of infrastructure platform. the ecosystem growth which we'll see in India of AI players will beat any other country, because we have the entrepreneurship, we have the data, we also have capital, and we have a lot of talent. So my first thing on what I said, I'll create an aha moment, hopefully. So all I think I've done so far is awareness. So the first A of my aha moment doesn't mean that I'll go for another 40 minutes, but I'll try and finish in 2 minutes if you allow. I have 2 minutes to go. We all have to recognize that technology is quite powerful and is already changing us. Not changing our businesses for sure, but changing us. I'll give you a very ridiculous analogy, but it's worth it for you to listen. Do you know how much is the energy in a barrel of oil compared to the human physical energy? Human physical energy. So if I were to compare a human labor and say how much is a human labor worth it compared to a barrel of oil, 1 barrel of oil produces enough energy equivalent of 12 man-years of human effort. Let me repeat again. 1 barrel energy calorific value is equivalent of 12 person-years of effort. So if you put 12 people in the room and get them to work for 1 year, physical labor, it produces the same amount of energy as 1 barrel of oil. Now let's talk about how many barrels of oil is going in today's AI. And I just put the power consumption. The number came so big that this 20 feet screen couldn't take it in terms of the number of zeros, and I didn't know that beyond the giga and peta and all of that numbers what it was. So I just basically said that it is huge. It's a huge amount of energy which is going to build, train, and run these models. Compare that to human output. Just a guess, assuming that the entire galaxy was filled with humans the way we have on Earth, and Earth is a dot in the galaxy, I think that energy will be higher than all the humans habitating that galaxy system. So there's a huge energy going in that compared to the human. So no doubt it'll become more powerful in terms of its ability to do work, and work is now becoming cognitive. And the next thing I want to say that, we do feel, and when we talk about training AI, I hear many times about the ethical bias, moral dilemma, and all of that. What is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, and we take pride in saying, we will build responsible AI which will tell us to do the right thing and not wrong thing. But let me take you back into a little bit of history. Only about 100 years ago, slavery was there. I'm not going to say, today we say slavery is bad, but I have no reason to believe that my forefathers were stupid. In that context, slavery was good. Untouchability, we all say today it was bad, but I think dowry, all of these things. So all of these things have changed over time. The people who ran the world at that point in time, I don't think were dumb. They were smart people. Let me take something even closer. So the fact on gay marriages, right? Only in our lifetime, I'll give you the example of 4 countries. 4 countries, including Nepal, India, Vietnam, Czech Republic, and US also. If you ask people 30 years ago saying, are you in support of gay marriage? There'll be minority. If you ask people saying, are you in support of gay marriage? There'll be majority. So how something which was completely wrong has become completely right? I think all of us in this room have recognized that we have lived through a time where we said that, hey, women shouldn't go and work in these kinds of businesses. And today we all say that women must come, and so who's right, who's wrong? So the point I'm trying to make is that we take the context of right and wrong on our lens as we stand today. So what does it really mean to raise AI? The AI which you're going to build is not for today, is for tomorrow, and not for tomorrow, maybe 200, 500, 10,000 years from now. And my problem is that we are incentivizing AI to get negative attention. So if you look at all the tweets, all the buzzes, all the things, anything which is sensational, negative, newspapers sell more because they create some sort of sensation through negativity. And we are becoming more and more polarized. My worry is that 20 years from now, I'll be sitting in this room and the AI will only amplify the models which we think today are right and not what we think tomorrow. So it'll actually be saying that women must not work because I trained them on 20 years old data. And therefore, my aha moment is that I hope I created some awareness. I hope that awareness led to some sort of humility that we have a huge responsibility to train AI to love us, and that should lead to this action. And I have these 4 requests, is that right or wrong is contextual. Be respectful of the people who have been in this room before and 5,000 years ago. AI will change us more ways than what we can imagine, and it's our obligation for the next generation to build AI which we will be happy with. And the last point I would say that let's teach AI to love humanity and not teach right or wrong. And last one is, let's enjoy the rest of the conference. I'm sure you'll learn more from others than you learned from me today. Thank you so much.